The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has had over 50 games released throughout the years, though there have been some games that never saw the light of day. Games that were cancelled, scrapped, or never had development finished. In this video, we're taking a look at cancelled Sonic games. The very first Sonic game to be cancelled was in the same year the series debuted, in 1991, with a port of the original Sonic the Hedgehog game to the AMIGA. It was to be developed by US Gold, and though being a port, from the limited screenshots available, it appears that the graphics would be different to that of those in the original game. Several magazines contained articles about it containing screenshots of what it would have looked like. Yet another port of Sonic the Hedgehog was planned for the Mega CD, and was showcased at Summer CES in Chicago in 1992, and was also featured in Mega Play magazine. The game was scrapped in order for Sonic CD to be made. Sonic's EDUSOFT was to be an edutainment game released in 1991, and was being developed by a company called Tiertex. The game contained a world map containing several levels, and in those levels players were required to complete math equations to progress. The game also contained a few mini-games that appeared throughout the levels. A working emulator is available for Sonic's EDUSOFT, though the game was cancelled before it could be completed. Sonic 2 was also planned to be ported to the Mega CD, though 2 was cancelled. The Genesis and CD versions of the game were originally the same thing, though separated when members of Sonic Team moved from Japan to America. Allegedly, Sonic 2 CD was scrapped due to the poor sales of the Genesis version in Japan, and would become Sonic CD. The differences of the CD version were the inclusion of cutscenes, high quality audio, and potentially even more stages, all thanks to the more advanced capabilities of the Mega CD. Though no gameplay of Sonic 2 CD has ever been seen, images of what appear to be a loading screen or hardware test show Sonic in different areas. Several gaming magazines at the time gave mention to it, referring to Sonic 2 CD as Super Sonic. A compilation of Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles was originally going to be available for the Sega Genesis under the title of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 Limited Edition, or Sonic 3 Plus. It would have served as an alternative to the lock-on technology of joining the two games' cartridges together to create Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The game was mentioned by gaming magazines and claimed to be 24 megabits, and two working prototypes exist for the game, though the only major differences between Sonic 3 Plus and Sonic 3 Knuckles is music changes. SEGASONIC Bros was a puzzle game that was set for release in 1992 for the Sega System C2, and was being developed by Fukio Mitsuji, the creator of Puzzle Bobble. It was originally an arcade game planned for release in Japan, but it was never revealed to the public. SEGASONIC Bros had both single and two-player modes, and featured gameplay similar to that of Robotnik's Bean Machine and Tetris. The game was cancelled for unknown reasons, and went unknown for a very long time, only recently being discovered in 2016 when a working board was found. Sonic Crackers or Sonic Stadium was an early build of Knuckles' Chaotix, and included many elements that would work their way into the final game. The menu of the game is made from ASCII art, which led many to believe that the game was an engine test comprised of multiple game engines. In the game, Sonic and Tails are playable characters, that were joined by a ring-like characters in the eventual Chaotix game. Stages and music are also very reminiscent of those in the final game, though no sound effects are present in the game, nor enemies. There are many levels in the game, separated into 7 worlds that each contain 5 attractions, as well as some extra stages. However, only 4 of these levels are playable. Interestingly, the game begins in the 4th attraction of the second world. Within these levels, once a certain time passes, the player will enter a field stage, which was a level with a top-down perspective, though in these Sonic and Tails are invincible. A playable demo of the game is available. The game's sister Sonic was going to be a localization of the Japanese game Pop Full Mail, and the port was going to replace the cast of the game with Sonic characters, with a story centering around Sonic finding his long-lost sister, Sister Sonic. What a creative name. However, due to the large number of hateful letters sent to Sega, and can you really blame them, the game was cancelled, and instead Pop Full Mail was ported to the Mega CD unchanged. The only information about Sister Sonic was contained within a few magazines in 1993, though no screenshots were ever released. Sonic Jr. was a proposed game for the PICO, a console that was aimed at younger children and had educational games made for it. Barely anything is known about the game, though it would have starred a younger version of Sonic, Sonic Jr. Once again, creative name, Sega. Sonic 16 was a game planned for the Sega Genesis by STI. It was based off the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and while a demo was made for the game in 1993, Sonic 16 was shot down by Sega and so was scrapped. The gameplay, as seen in the demo, saw Sonic moving up and down a screen to hide from enemies, like the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid. Sonic is able to climb onto ledges and pull himself up, and had a few new moves in the game. The player could take rings from Sonic's life bar and throw them at enemies, could use a buzzsaw move to destroy obstacles, and a spike blast attack where Sonic could shoot his quills at enemies. A demo with no name served as a stage of development for the eventual Sonic X-TREME. The only proof of its existence is a single image created by Chris Sen, and shows that the demo would have been similar to the gameplay of Sonic 3D Blast. However, it would have featured a smaller and narrower environment to explore than that of the aforementioned 3D Blast, and appears to be less of an explorative game and more of a platforming game. Chris Sen claimed that the screenshot was created prior to Sonic 3D being released during the development of the 32X. Sonic Mars was a game pitched for the Sega 32X by Michael Kozaka in 1994. The game was turned down by the head of Sonic team, Yuji Naka, as he was apparently not impressed with what had been presented. The game was to be in 3D and based off the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. When Kozaka quit Sega, the lead designer of the game became Chris Sen, and the game was moved to the Sega Saturn and was reworked into Sonic X-TREME. Sonic Saturn was a game that was being developed alongside Sonic X-TREME by STI. It would have had a more realistic visual style and was to be in 3D. The only available images of it are concept art for a wetlands level and Badnik designs. Sonic Saturn also contained a bonus game that was a version of Pool. In the game, Sonic stood behind a ball, and the player could aim him at the balls to hit them into holes around the map. Several stages of this bonus game were planned, and later stages would contain enemies. Screenshots show an Egypt-themed level, a space-themed level, a Roman-themed level, a level based in the future, and a snow-themed level. Interesting that the bonus game had more thought put into it than the actual game. Sonic Ride was a short pre-rendered clip of footage that was supposedly a planned arcade ride that Sega was working on. The video was mentioned by several magazines, though as the video was included in the Sega Saturn game Sonic Jam, the footage is reasonably well known. The actual video itself sees the camera skipping between shots of Sonic running and a first-person view of Green Hill Zone, indicating that the ride would have been an immersive first-person experience. It is unknown why it was cancelled. Sonic Sports was a game planned from the Sega 32X in 1995. It was hinted at in an issue of the magazine Game Players, which claimed the game would have similar gameplay to that of Acme All-Stars, containing basketball, volleyball, and soccer games, and would also include a cast of Sega characters such as Brystar, like the eventual Sonic and All-Stars games. Perhaps the most notorious cancelled Sonic game was Sonic X-TREME. The game had a long and complicated development process involving multiple forms and stages. The previously mentioned Sonic 16, Sonic Saturn, and Sonic Mars served as past incarnations of the game. Though only one form of the game was ever shown to the public, the project dates as far back as 1993, and ended up switching many consoles until the game was finally cancelled in early 1997. The idea behind the game was to create the next big Sonic game, and while many smaller titles such as Sonic 3D Blast and Knuckles' Chaotix were released during its development, X-TREME was to be the true successor to the last main Sonic game, Sonic and Knuckles. The main story saw Sonic attempting to retrieve the Rings of Order, ancient and powerful rings that were being guarded by two new characters, Professor Gazebo Bubowski, can't believe I just said that name, and his daughter Tiara, before Dr. Eggman can find them. Gameplay for Sonic X-TREME changed constantly, however the idea was eventually settled on Sonic being placed in a 3D environment that encouraged exploration. The game was seen through a sort of fisheye lens to allow players to see their surroundings, and levels were like that of tubes, they were large and allowed players to explore. Sonic was able to run on walls and walk on ceilings as well. The game also apparently was to include Tails, Knuckles, and Tiara as playable characters, and each were given their own playstyle and camera view, for example Knuckles' gameplay being from a top-down perspective. Amy was also at one point considered to be a playable character. Sonic was also planned to be given new abilities in the game, including a super bounce and ring shield. X-TREME had many ambitious ideas, such as a giant metal Sonic boss fight, and while several parts of it were working or completed, the game was ultimately cancelled. The reason for X-TREME's cancellation was because Sega pushed its development to promote sales for the Sega Saturn, but due to its difficult development and the issues at Sega with staff leaving, the company was forced to ultimately cancel the game. Sonic X Chaos Emerald Chaos was the second Sonic X game to be released for the Game Boy Advance video and contained episodes 3 and 4 of Sonic X, Missile Wrist Rampage and Chaos Emerald Chaos. It was cancelled for unknown reasons. Sonic DS was a game shown at E3 in 2004. At the time of it being shown, it was praised by Nintendo magazine for having fantastic visuals. Apparently this was fantastic in 2004, though contained poor gameplay. Wait. What does this magazine say? The demo saw players' hands being cut to ribbons, except it didn't. That's so funny. From what was shown, the player moved the stylus left and right on the bottom speed to increase Sonic's speed as he ran in a straight line. And though jumping was also possible by tapping the screen, the levels contained little platforming. After crossing the finish line, the player would attain a ranking of how fast they went and how long it took them to finish. Though Sonic DS would be scrapped for obviously cutting the player's hands to ribbons, elements of it can be seen in Sonic Rush. Sonic the Hedgehog X-TREME, this time they spelt it right, was a preliminary title of an unfinished game for the Xbox. The game is a hoverboarding and racing combat game, and seems to be what led to Sonic Riders. The game was developed by Visionscape Interactive, and when the game was scrapped, the company instead made the very similar Tech Deck Bare Knuckle Grind. All that is available of the game is a demo, and in said demo the player can choose between Sonic and Shadow, and the gameplay is similar to that of your average Tony Hawk game, with tricks able to be pulled off, rails to grind, edges to balance, and the player falling off their board if they crash. The demo contained 3 modes: Mission, Combat, and Race. In the Mission mode, the aim was to locate a key hidden throughout a level in order to unlock the exits to complete it. The Combat mode is what one would expect, with 2 players skating throughout a level grabbing weapons to try and take each other out. The Race mode appears to be the player skating through an endless track. Sonic the Hedgehog Awakening is a game with very little information about it known. The title of the game was found on the resume of Silver's voice actor at the time, Pete Capella. The game was in development between 2006 and 2009, presumably as a sequel to Sonic 06, however, the reason for its cancellation is unknown.